Hi, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here for another PB&J card class. And in today's video, we will be creating this card, and it features the beautiful poppies from our slapstick cling stamp by Penny Black called Parade of Flowers. And I will also be creating that circular frame using our creative die set called Stitch Square and Circles. And just real quick here, I am going to pop up and give you a little peek at the supply list in creating this card, including the Copic markers for coloring the flowers. And this is just a little peek at that. I will put it back up for you at the very end of the video up on screen. So if you want to look at it in more detail, you can do so at that time and just hit pause. Now I'm going to go ahead and begin by inking up my stamp using Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I am stamping this onto Nina Solar White cardstock. And I am going to stamp it a couple of times just to get a really nice dark black outline for all of those flowers. You wouldn't have to do this, but I just find I really like that, deepening up that stamping by doing it a couple of times. And just patting it in here and giving it another stamp. And I'm going to be coloring this with my Copic markers. And like I said at the beginning of the video, all of the exact colors are going to be listed in the supply list up on screen at the very end of the video. And I'm going to show you just how I did the shading on some of these petals for you. So for the red flowers, I started with my darkest color. Down in any areas that are behind another petal is where I like to put that darker color. Then I can move in with my lighter shades and blend that as I go. So when I color with Copic markers, I typically like to start with my darker colors and then blend them out using the lighter colors. But these flowers also look great if you watercolor them. You could do them with colored pencils. There's just lots of different ways to color these poppies. I think they lend themselves to many different mediums. And I'm just going to continue coloring the flowers and the leaves using that same process for darker color to the lighter color blending. So I'm going to put on some music here, and I will be back in just a bit after the coloring is complete. Alright, once all of those were colored, I did go ahead and fussy cut them out, but I only cut portions of the flowers and just a few of the leaves. And they're actually quite simple to cut out, so don't be afraid of getting those scissors out and fussy cutting these flowers. Once I was done, I took a Memento marker in the color of Tuxedo Black and just went around the edges to hide any imperfections in my cutting. And also here taking a Gather Twigs distress ink pad and ink blending tool with a foam pad and pouncing that around the edges. And that will make it look like you perfectly cut them out even if you didn't. Now I do have a piece of watercolor paper now, Canson 140 pound watercolor paper, cold press, and I traced the stitched frame that will actually be showing onto that background circle. And I just cut this using a basic circle die. If you didn't have one, you could just trace around the stitched frame and cut that. This is going to become the background for the flowers. And I'm painting this using my Sakura Koi Field Sketch Box watercolor paints. I'm just using the green and the blue that are in the bottom left-hand corner. And hardly any of this is going to show. It's just going to hint at that these flowers are outside and that there's green grass and blue skies. So I am just painting that on and staying close to that circle that I had drawn on with my pencil so that the green and the blue do not show through any of the stitching once I mount that stitched frame. And hopefully that will make a little bit more sense once we start assembling the card. I'm putting down the paint and then going back in with water and blending the edge that is left and kind of letting that fade into white towards the center of the circle. And then I can go in and darken up those edges while it's still wet, and that just makes it easier to blend. And I'll go ahead and dry that before moving on to the next step. So here is that beautiful stitched frame that was cut using our creative die set. And I'm going to put just a little bit of antique linen distress ink around the edges. And I'm sorry I'm a little off camera there. I'm just applying that using an ink blending tool with a foam pad. It's hard to tell on video right now that that's actually any ink going on there, but once it gets mounted onto the card, it's a lot more obvious, and it just ties it into the background and the rest of the card. So I got it around the outer edges, and then I'm also putting that sponge applicating tool towards the inside of the circle too. So that was the antique linen. And then I'm also going to very lightly pounce around the outer edge with the Gather Twig distress ink too. And I'll get the interior portion of the frame. Now I'm ready to start putting things together. So I have not put the frame down yet, but I am just putting my flowers in here and just deciding upon the arrangement for those. I have foam squares on the back of the flowers, so they are popped up. This flower I'll go ahead and just use liquid adhesive because it's mostly going on top of another flower that is already popped up. And then I like the visual triangle created by having 3 of the yellow poppies. So this one, hardly any of it's going to show, but just enough to sort of have 3 of those yellow ones sort of guide your eye around that background. I'm sure there was probably an easier way to assembling all of this, but sometimes I just go with what's working at the time. I'm just trimming off that extra part of that flower so it does not show through the stitching on the circular frame. And for this, I'm going to mount this just flat to the background. Now to turn this into a card, you would just need another solid shaped circle that you would add to the background. I would put a score line about 1/3 of the way down from that and adhere it just above the score line to the actual card base that we're working on right now. And that'll create a hinge and finish off the card design, and it's fun to have a circular card. This would also make a fun gift tag. You could just add some ribbon up at the top, punch a hole and add some ribbon up at the top, and it would really pretty up a gift bag and make it a handmade gift. I'm going to trim off this stem, and this is complete. So here's another look at the finished card design. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, and on our website and blog. And I will link to all of those for you down in the YouTube description box below. And stay tuned here at the very end. Up on screen, I will pop up those complete supply lists for you. Thanks for watching.